What's going on, everybody? First long-form YouTube video. We're going to preview all the games, look a little bit at the Chargers-Vikings game. Before we get into it, please subscribe. What else do people ask you to do on here? Follow me on TikTok at lukefit.g. I'm also going to start to try to do some stuff on Twitch. Don't really have a great workflow planned for this, but pretty big believer in learning by doing. So we're just going to jump straight into it and just try to get better each and every time. So let's start by talking about the Vikings and Chargers really quick. I think for all intents and purposes for the Vikings, you can kind of throw this one out the window. They only had 27 pass attempts and 11 rush attempts. Aaron Jones came back, had 5 attempts, 15 yards. Jordan Mason, very disappointing for me in a couple of leagues. 4 carries and 3 yards. Aaron Jones did start this game. He did have the first 2 plays of the game. First one was I think it was a rush design for him, and then the second one was a pass swung out to him, which Carson Wentz missed the mark on. But disappointing day overall for the Vikings offense. Justin Jefferson makes up for it. 7 catches, 74 yards, 14 PPR points, and then Jordan Addison, only 3 grabs for 26 yards, but bails you out with a touchdown. So this game does not change what I think very much about the Vikings offense. As far as the Chargers go, Justin Herbert just shows you how freaking good that guy is when he can get some O-line help. Just one guy back in the lineup, even with Mekhi Becton going out. Joe Alt made a pretty big difference, I think. Lots of scrambles for Justin Herbert. I think they said at the end of the game last night he had like 7 scrambles. He winds up picking up 60 yards on the ground. Excuse the voice crack. Kimani Vidal. Just kind of a stud in 2 of 3 games since taking over for Omarion Hampton. 117 yards on the ground, 5 yards per carry on 23 attempts. And then as a receiver, he also got only had 2 targets, 1 catch, 10 yards. Of the Chargers receivers, Ladd McConkey, 10 targets, 6 grabs, 88 yards and a touchdown. And then Oronde Gadsden, back-to-back really solid weeks. He did not quite get the 160 yards he got last week, but 5 targets, catches all 5 of them, 77 yards and a touchdown. I think it's kind of hard to count this as something that's not repeatable now. I'm not expecting him to go for 100 yards every week. I'm not expecting him to score a touchdown every week. And this is going to be kind of a frustrating receiving room. Quentin Johnston managers are feeling that right now as he ran almost as many routes as McConkey. He ran more than Keenan Allen, but wound up with 0 targets on his 22 routes run. So I think from a pass catcher standpoint for the Chargers, kind of a weird game script. They were up pretty much the entire game. Could have been a much different game if Isaiah Rodgers maintains control of the ball on the way to the ground early and gets a pick 6 like we anticipated, but that was not the case. So when we do this, we're going to go from the games with the highest over-under to the lowest over-under. And through that, we're going to talk about each team's implied total. The implied total is how many points Vegas projects that team to score that week. So we're going to start with Dallas Cowboys versus the Denver Broncos. Cowboys have the number 3 passing offense. Broncos have the number 5 passing defense. And then very similar matchup from a rushing efficiency standpoint. The Cowboys have the 8th ranked rushing offense, and the Broncos have the 8th ranked rushing defense. For the flip side on the Broncos, they are a top 10 run team, and Dallas is one of the worst teams against the run. Same thing, they're like middling passing efficiency wise, and Dallas is also not very good guarding the pass. With 6 teams on a bye, I think you gotta fire up J.K. Dobbins as a high-end RB2. If you're desperate for a flex, you could do worse than R.J. Harvey, although his involvement recently has not been all that inspiring. If we're just looking at the past 5 weeks of action, let's check R.J. Harvey here for a second. He's getting out-snapped 49% to 29%, and then Tyler Bidet got 20% in that 5-week span, has only played 3 games in those 5 weeks. R.J. Harvey is getting about 3.5 targets per game the past 5 weeks, and against the Cowboys defense, you kind of got to hope he gets a couple of those. And then J.K. Dobbins has been solid. He's been like a high-end RB3, but I think he upgrades to a mid to high-end RB2 in this matchup against the Cowboys. think Bo Nix is a top 10 play pretty easily, and Dak Prescott, although he is going up against a tougher defense, you probably have to start him. For the receivers, I know Denver has been a tough defense, but you're not going to sit CeeDee Lamb, and you're probably not sitting George Pickens either. I think you just are more understanding if one of them has a bummer of a day against Pat Surtain in that defense. That pass rush is going to make things tougher for Dak, but he's crushing it. There isn't a matchup that scares me enough to bench either of those guys. Same thing goes with Jake Ferguson. You're not sitting him there either. Evan Ingram is seeing more involvement, 16% target share the past 5 weeks, which would rank, let's see, past 5 weeks among tight ends. That puts him still not in the top 20 in target share, right at 20 actually the past 5 weeks. So he is getting more involved. He is the tight end 14 the past 5 weeks, but bye week fill-in, you can do worse. Tight end landscape, I keep saying it, is pretty rough. All right, next game we're going to go to is the Bears and the Ravens. From a matchup standpoint, Ravens have the 30th ranked passing defense from an efficiency standpoint and the 30th ranked rushing defense. So you fire up Bears pass catchers and fire up Bears running backs. DeAndre Swift, probably a top 20 play this week. Let's go past 3 weeks. DeAndre Swift's getting 56% of the snaps. Kyle Monangai is getting 39% of the snaps. I do not hate Kyle Monangai as a RB3 type play this week if you're desperate. The past 3 weeks, DeAndre Swift is the RB6 and Monangai is the RB17. So very similar to a poor man's version of Monty and Gibbs in Detroit, which I said in a video earlier this week. Ben Johnson knows a little bit about that type of split. If we want to look at the receivers, Rome Odunze's had a couple of stinkers, but you're still firing him up. You're not worried about that. DJ Moore, he's still running the second most routes of any receiver on the team. He's getting fewer targets than Olamide Zaccheaus, which is a little concerning. But don't hate firing him up. I think you've got to price him as a low-end wide receiver 3, high-end wide receiver 4 in this matchup. And then from a tight end standpoint, I don't feel great about starting either Colston Loveland or Cole Kmet right now, but Colston Loveland is running more routes than Cole Kmet the past 5 weeks, getting more targets, especially the past 2 weeks. Now, over to the Ravens side, if Lamar Jackson plays, that helps everybody involved. You're obviously starting Lamar if he's playing. You're starting Derrick Henry either way, I would say. And you're probably also starting Zay Flowers. But if Lamar plays, you just bump their values up a bit. The next game is Monday night, the Chiefs and the Commanders. Just some matchup comparisons right here. The Chiefs have a top 5 passing defense. The Commanders, obviously, with Jaden Daniels out. I believe that's the case. Jaden Daniels his status is unspecified as of Friday, and he did not participate in practice Friday. So I would assume Jaden Daniels is not going to play this weekend, which really hurts any of the pass catching options the Commanders have. Still a whole bunch of unspecified stuff here. Zach Ertz, he's not injured, but he's resting. Terry McLaurin, he was a full participant Friday. Deebo Samuel was a full participant Friday. So you got to think that those two will probably play. I have not seen any reports on either of them. You can fire them up as like high-end, like maybe low-end wide receiver 2s, Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel. I'm just not fired up about starting either of them. They could have good games. It could be in positive game scripts. A lot of the Chiefs' defensive ranking has to do with them allowing like 60 yards passing to the Raiders last week. But again, a matchup where you kind of want to adjust and lower your expectations. From the Chiefs' standpoint, Kareem Hunt was limited he was limited in practice on Friday, which makes Brashard Smith an even more intriguing play. I'm probably not firing him up unless I'm desperate. Like if I'm choosing between Brashard Smith and Tyjae Spears or Tyler Algier, like that's like I would probably go back and forth between Smith and Algier. I'm not recommending starting Brashard Smith, but if Kareem Hunt doesn't play, I think you could do a lot worse. From a receiver standpoint on the Chiefs, I kind of wanted to look at the target share numbers last week with Rashee Rice coming back. Rashee Rice, 27% target share, and then Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy each got 12% of the targets. Xavier Worthy did run the most routes of any receiver on the team, just didn't get a ton of targets, so that's encouraging. We haven't seen the home run upside from Xavier Worthy yet. Obviously, he's coming off the injury. Travis Kelce did not get a lot of involvement, but again, tight end landscape is awful. If you have Travis Kelce on your team, you might not have any better options to go with. The next highest score projected game is the Indianapolis Colts, which have a league high 30.5 point implied total for this matchup. The Colts are the most efficient offense in the league, period, running and passing the ball, and the Titans are bottom 6, bottom 10 in passing and rushing efficiency on defense. That hurts. Injury report. Calvin Ridley was ruled out. He's not playing. Jeffrey Simmons, defensive tackle, is out. Jonathan Taylor's a smash start every week, but especially this week. The only reason I would maybe lower expectations is if we think it's going to be such a blowout that they just preserve him and don't play him for the whole game. I think that's happened already once or twice this year. They are 14.5 point favorites, so you still got to fire up Jonathan Taylor. Nothing is stopping you from starting him. From a Titans pass catching standpoint, I'm really not excited to start anybody. Like Alec Ayamanor, I guess if you had to start someone, but there is no pass catcher in this offense right now, at least from a receiver standpoint, that ranks top 50 the past 5 weeks. You're just not starting them unless you're backed against the wall and you have no other options. Chigo Okonkwo isn't even top 25 at his position the past 5 weeks. I unfortunately am having to start Tyjae Spears in a 10-team league, which is criminal. I should probably be arrested for having to do that, but I am because I have no other choice. I'm not super excited about the Colts pass catchers this week. Josh Downs was a full participant, so expect him to play. I just don't expect them to run a ton of plays and be in a ton of passing situations. I'm obviously firing up Tyler Warren. I don't have a problem with you starting Michael Pittman or flexing Josh Downs. I'm just not really thrilled about any of those guys in this matchup. The Bills and the Panthers, the 4-3 Carolina Panthers, is that a fact? Like I'm not tripping. Like that's a real part of reality. Interesting matchup. James Cook's kind of had a rough stretch here, expecting him to bounce back. The Panthers do have a top 10 rushing defense, but the Bills have the number 2 rushing offense in terms of efficiency. You're obviously firing up Josh Allen. Josh Allen, James Cook are must starts. Dalton Kincaid, I would also say, is a guy you can feel comfortable starting. For the Panthers, I don't mind either Rico Dowdle or Chuba Hubbard. Right now, at this point in time, if I had to choose one, I would run with Rico Dowdle. But the Bills have not been great against the run. They rank 25th in overall rush defense efficiency. Meanwhile, the Panthers' offense ranks 6th in rushing efficiency. So I think both of them can be viable plays. Rico Dowdle did fine against the Jets last week. If he scored a touchdown, we'd be thinking a lot differently about that performance. Bryce Young is not playing. He's been ruled out. But Andy Dalton, I don't think hurts the pass catchers here that much. I'm still firing up Tet. In deeper leagues, I don't have a problem firing up Xavier Legette. This year, Dalton Kincaid, 3rd on the team in targets behind Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman, but he's first in yards per reception, 1st in touchdowns, and then Tet is the clear target leader for Carolina. I'm firing up him with confidence. I'm firing up Kincaid with confidence. If I had to choose between Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman, I'm choosing Khalil Shakir just because the past 5 weeks or so he has been much more heavily involved. I guess not much more. 22% target share for Shakir since week 3, 20% for Keon Coleman since week 3. If we bump that up to go from week 4, it's also still pretty even. If we're going the last 2 weeks, it's also still pretty even. It's just Coleman hasn't been doing much with it. And so if I had to choose between Coleman and Shakir, just give me the guy who's getting more volume. All right, Chris Godwin, Bucky Irving out. Mike Evans out. Let's look at the last couple weeks. It's been ugly for the Buccaneers. Weeks 6 and 7. Did somebody say 6, 7? Route leaders. Tez Johnson has run the most routes the past couple weeks, followed by Sterling Shepard, Emeka Egbuka, and then Cameron Johnson. Target share leaders in that same span the past couple of weeks. It's Emeka Egbuka 1, Tez Johnson 2, Sterling Shepard 3. I would probably start those guys in that order. Emeka Egbuka is questionable, and it looks like on Friday he was a full participant. I would expect him to go. It's just hamstrings are so tough, and you've got to think that's been affecting him the past couple of weeks. Looking at the running backs past couple weeks, Rachaad White, got to fire him up. He's got to be considered a top 15 player so this week, I would imagine. I think consensus probably has him around there. Consensus has him top 10. I agree with that. For the Saints, Spencer Rattler in Superflex or deep leagues. Baker Mayfield's obviously a smash start just about every week. Chris Olave, you're firing him up no matter what. No Kendre Miller. I'm curious to see if more workload goes to Alvin Kamara in that case, who has not been an inspiring fantasy option this year, but he has had a high enough floor to not totally kill you. Past couple weeks, he's a low-end RB2. Season long, he's a low-end RB2. That's still a valuable piece to have on your fantasy team. Like, is he putting up numbers he was last year or years prior? No. But is he delivering you goose eggs? Like, no. He's giving you between 8 and 12 points, which is a bummer, but he's at least consistent. Not giving you a high floor, but it's not caving out underneath you. And then Juwan Johnson's given us 3 games to start the season with good involvement. Right after that, 3 games of poor involvement. And then last week, he winds up getting what? 23% target share, which was the same as Chris Olave. They both raked in 7 targets. So I'm going to kind of fly by the seat of my pants with Juwan Johnson. When things are good, I'll probably roll with him. And with things are bad, when things are bad, I'll probably bench him like I did this past week. And that'll suck, but he's one of their main red zone targets. Just kind of a gross offense. They haven't been as bad as I thought they would be. They've been actually way more competitive. I think the Seahawks are the only team that's truly outclassed them. He's someone like I'm firing up as a low-end tight end 1 this week with 6 teams on bye. Next matchup, we got the Packers at the Steelers, the Aaron Rodgers revenge game. The Packers have an implied total of 24.25, and the Steelers have an implied total, of 21.25. For looking at quarterbacks this week, I don't love Jordan Love from a fantasy standpoint. I know Joe Flacco just torched the Steelers, and I do think there is going to be a little bit of an edge to this game offensively. I do expect both offenses to perform at a high level. Packers defense has not been super forgiving, so I wouldn't imagine many of you have Aaron Rodgers as your QB1. If you have Aaron Rodgers in your team, you might have a better option. Just looking at the numbers, Packers offense, they have the number 4 passing efficiency. They're just not in a ton of throwing situations. Steelers are one of the worst passing disadvantages. Rushing is pretty even across the board. Steelers number 10 in passing efficiency, Packers 21st in passing defense, so a couple of good advantages to be had there. From an injury standpoint, doesn't look like a ton going on. Matthew Golden was limited with a hip injury. Christian Watson was limited. He might make his return. Josh Jacobs was limited. Expect him to play. I would probably expect all those guys to play unless you've seen otherwise from any other source. DK Metcalf's good to go. Let's go last 5 games for the Packers receivers. Targets. Tucker Kraft. And let's go past 4 games. Romeo Doubs, 24% target share. He's leading the way there. He is a low-end wide receiver 2, during that span. Tucker Kraft's been a mid-range tight end 2. I'm still firing up Tucker Kraft unless I have, I guess McBride's on bye. Probably starting Kittle over him, but Tucker Kraft's a top 5 play. I'd imagine consensus has him as a top 5 play. They do. They have him as the number 2 overall play. For the Steelers, I'm not really happy about firing up any of their tight ends just because they're all used pretty evenly. I know that was especially the case against the Bengals last week. If we're looking at the past few weeks, though, past 4 games for the Steelers, Jonnu Smith has a 15% target share. Darnell Washington has a 12% target share, and Pat Freiermuth has a 9% target share. During that same time span, DK Metcalf is the wide receiver 21, getting a healthy 24% target share, but on a actual whole number basis, he's only getting about 6 targets a game. He does have the ability to take a lot of them to the house, and he is getting a decent bit of end zone looks. He's getting a lot of air yards on his looks, averaging 16.5 air yards per target. So he's kind of like a boomer bust wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 type guy. I would probably lean toward the wide receiver 2 side. I would imagine consensus has him as a top 20 play this week, and they have him as a top 11 play this week. They have him at wide receiver 11, So firing up DK Metcalf, see if Aaron Rodgers' revenge game. I do think Aaron Rodgers might pop off in this one. Just the narrative surrounding it. Atlanta Falcons versus Miami Dolphins. How many more games do we have until Mike McDaniel gets canned? I know it might not be fair to speculate about another man's job security, but that's just kind of the business that he's in. Think you gotta fire up. Obviously, I'm not saying anything dramatic here, but you're never benching Bijan Robinson or Drake London. Darnell Mooney was limited in practice Friday. Don't hate playing him. Don't hate playing Kyle Pitts. I think I'm fine firing up a lot of Falcons in this matchup just because the Browns looked competent against the Dolphins last week. So Dolphins and Cowboys are kind of like green light teams to play your guys against. And that's always going to be the case when it comes to your studs. Speaking of studs, Devon Achane, you're firing him up. You're firing Jalen Waddle up, but I think that's all there really is to talk about here on this one. Bengals at the Jets. I know it's been a disappointing stretch for Breece Hall. Past 4 games, he ranks as a running back 22 overall, and it just seems like people are so much lower on him than that. Like, it hasn't been that bad for Breece Hall. I get if we want to look at the past 2 weeks, he's been like a RB3, which is not what you signed up for when you drafted him, but he's good enough to, like, he's skilled enough. Tyrod Taylor's going to probably start, it looks like. Does that kind of give them like a kick in the butt a little bit, and they kind of get going a little bit faster than they have? 0-7, like, got to be playing with some sort of intensity. I fully expect the Bengals to win, but it's not something that I am saying it's going to be so bad that you can't start Breece Hall. Garrett Wilson's out. That stinks. I'm not comfortable starting Mason Taylor. Similar to Juwan Johnson, had a couple of really good involvement games, had a few poor involvement games. From a Bengals standpoint, I think we're back to square one with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And when I say that, I mean our perception of them is pretty much back to where it was when the season started. I think you're firing both of them up. Sauce Gardner is out. I think that makes it a smash play for T. Higgins, for Jamar Chase. And considering the Bengals' defense is pretty rough, I think this has an opportunity to be a fairly high-scoring game. You got to fire Chase Brown up. This could be your last chance to buy him after a really slow start. I'd imagine they lean on the run a little bit more here. I'd imagine they have Chase Brown as a top 12 play this week. They have him as 17. I would have him higher than that. He's the guy I have green flag this week. I would put him higher than RB17. Let's see what the numbers look like from a rushing defense standpoint. Yeah, the Jets have an average rush defense. Bengals have a poor rush offense, but certainly looked a lot better against the Steelers last week. Eagles and Giants rematch. That should be a good one. A.J. Brown is out. You can fire up Devontae Smith, with a ton of confidence. Saquon Barkley Look, we've learned our lesson with Derrick Henry, I think. All right. We think that Rams game wasn't a fluke. They're coming back from bye. We think Derrick Henry's going to be good. We learned our lesson with Jamar Chase. We learned our lesson maybe with Brian Thomas Jr. There are a few studs I'm forgetting that I'm leaving out, but I'm just not in the business of selling a guy like Saquon for 60 cents on the dollar after he has a poor start to the year. I'm just not. I'm firing up Saquon no matter what. I'm going down with the ship, if you will. Dallas Goedert, probably got to start him if you have him, unless you have a stud tight end ahead of him. And then Darius Slayton's playing. I'm not super excited about any Giants pass catcher. Probably trying to stay away from them if I can. And then Jackson Dart, I'm okay starting in just about any matchup just because of his rushing upside. You're going to have a pretty steady floor to where even if he only has a $125 through the air, a touchdown and a pick, if he adds 65 rushing yards to that, then that's what? 5, 9, that's like still 14-point floor. So I'm totally comfortable firing up Jackson Dart. And the Eagles are the Eagles. When they're healthy, you're probably starting them and holding your breath if they don't do well. But I think Devontae Smith is probably a top, I don't want to say top 10, but probably a top 15 play this week. Consensus has him at 13, so they agree with me. Texans have a really good pass defense. I would expect George Kittle to be more involved. I'm not worried about him at all. It was his first game back. He was excellent as a blocker. He was on the field, just was not involved in the passing game. I think he just had 2 targets. Texans, again, do have a really good defense, but I do think that George Kittle is a guy I'm starting. I have him in a bunch of leagues, and I'm firing him up without any worries there. Don't have to say anything about Christian McCaffrey. Ricky Pearsall did not practice on Thursday. Do not have their Friday practice. Don't have their Friday practice information yet. Jawan Jennings was a full participant. Mac Jones, full participant. Christian McCaffrey, full participant. Trent Williams, full. That obviously helps. And then Nico Collins, big bummer. I don't think he's going to play. I'm not a doctor, but it just doesn't seem like he will. Christian Kirk also did not practice. In that case, I don't hate. Let's look at who were their leading receivers the past couple of weeks. Let's look at the Texans here real quick. No, I'm not trying to watch film right now. In routes, it goes Xavier Hutchinson, Jaden Higgins, Braxton Berrios. Well, I guess Jalen Noel, because Berrios has only played 1 game the past few weeks. If I had to rank the Texans receivers, I would probably go, if there's no Nico Collins and Christian Kirk, I would go Xavier Hutchinson, Jaden Higgins, and then Jalen Noel. Dalton Schultz, would receive a decent uptick, but you can probably do better than Dalton Schultz. Not super excited about him. I would downgrade all of the 49ers receivers, not only because Kittle's back, but because the Texans' passing defense has been pretty stout, pretty strong this year. And then if we can... running backs. Again, Christian McCaffrey, we're not worried about whatsoever. And then going Woody Marks over Nick Chubb. I don't know how much this had to do with them playing the Seahawks, who have a pretty good front. But Woody Marks had 61% of the running back snaps against the Seahawks, and Nick Chubb had 26. If we're talking about rush attempts, he outrushed him 10 attempts to 5. He ran 23 routes. Nick Chubb ran 10. He had 5 targets. Nick Chubb had 3. It's the Woody show from here on out, I think, in Houston. Then the last matchup, Drake May against the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns have not been kind to opposing fantasy quarterbacks this year. Drake May still probably a top 10 play, but again, when you have studs who play against really good defenses, I think your whole philosophy just has to be, look, I'm still going to roll with my guy, but if they have a bad game, I kind of have to expect that because of the matchup. Not afraid of starting Drake May in this spot at all. Quinshon Judkins has graduated to RB1 status for me, low end, but you see the ceiling. He's been pretty dang good, and that's with a couple of long touchdown runs called back this year. I'm not excited about any Cleveland pass catcher. Let's see. Jerry Jeudy was limited. David Njoku was limited. The only one is Harold Fannin. I'd probably have him as a top 12 tight end play. ECR has him at 10, so they agree with me there. Running backs, I'm not super excited about Ramondre Stevenson, but figure he probably has to be a top 25 play. They have him at 23, so they agree with me there. Hunter Henry, you can go ahead and start him. Top 10 play in my eyes. They have him at 14, so I'm a little bit higher on Hunter Henry this week. Yeah, I don't know how much else there is to talk about here. Stephon Diggs, I guess I'm okay firing him up. He's the pass catcher I want the most in New England. Travion Henderson can stay on your bench. And I don't really think there's too much to dig into here. So, again, we're going to make this a better and better product as we do it each week. First time doing it, there's going to be some kinks in it. There's going to be maybe some speed bumps that we didn't quite clean up. Please let me know in the comments anything you'd like to see, anything you'd like discussed. Any sort of feedback you have. I want to make this as good of a product for you, the viewer, as possible. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. Please click subscribe so you don't miss anything. I would really appreciate that. And then if you're here because you found me on TikTok, thank you for supporting my videos. If you hopped in a live before, thank you for support there. And I really appreciate it for real. So thank you guys. I'll see you very soon. Go get a dub this week. And that is it for now. Deuces.